After my mother graduated from medical school at Meharry, she went back to her hometown of New Iberia, Louisiana, wanted to set up her practice, and went to the bank to borrow $300 to get the practice going. And the banks required that her parents and my father's parents put up their house for collateral. And she said she could not ask her parents to put up their home that they'd worked so hard for her loan. So she decided she was going to go to California and set up her practice there because she thought things would be better there. Stopped in Fort Worth to visit a friend of hers who said they just built this new hospital in Midland and they're looking for Negro physicians. So she took the train to Midland, went to the hospital, asked if they would give her privileges. And they looked at her and said, "Why wouldn't we?" So that's how my mother ended up in Midland setting up her practice in the early 50s. She called my father, who was teaching school in Louisiana, and said, "I've just got hospital privileges in Midland, Texas." And he goes, "Great, where is that?" So my father came out here, she set up her practice, and before he started teaching school, it was just the two of them. He was her receptionist slash nurse until the practice got going and she could hire some help. If I'm not mistaken, they had a floor in the hospital with private rooms. My mother had a patient who she wanted to put in one of those private rooms, and they said there was none available. She packed that patient up in her car and took her to the other hospital across town. And after that, there was no more problems with the rooms at the hospital. She was instrumental in setting up the first EMS system here. Ambulances were run by funeral homes before she got involved, so that they're trained paramedics running the ambulance system now. And the emergency room used to be staffed by every physician in town had to take their turn. The dermatologist, the podiatrist, the surgeon. So that if you were in an accident and you went to the emergency room, the podiatrist may be on call. So she worked with others to make sure there were trained physicians in the ER 24 hours a day for health care. And one of the things she said to resident doctors, never forget the power, the touch of the healing hand. Sometimes your patients just need to be touched and said, "How are you feeling? How are you doing?" Because anyone who goes to a doctor now knows your doctor sits across the room and he's on a computer. And she said that's important to our relationships with each other. Family was important. Sometimes we argued about what was more important, family or patients, because her office was next to the house. Sometimes patients would come by after hours and go and ring the doorbell on the house and say, "Well, I didn't want to bother you during office hours, so I thought I'd see you after your office was closed." So she would tell my brother and me to go open the office, let them in, make sure the heat or air conditioner was on, and she would see them after her dinner. She never turned anybody away. She saw them regardless of their ability to pay, and she started practicing back in the days of house calls. She still made house calls to patients, and she would get calls from a family member saying, "Well, my father doesn't want to take his medicine." She says, "I'll be over there at 6 o'clock. And she would go and make sure that that person took their medicine.